Hi, this is John Linneball, and I am doing this video finally that I've promised for some time. It's the SAT and ACT Writing English and Reading Diction video. These are things that you should know for the SAT and ACT essay, English writing sections, and for reading. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. I'm with John Linneball Tutoring, johnlinneball.com, john@johnlinneball.com, and here's my phone number, here's my cell number. Yes, you can text message me if you like. What the heck is diction, anyway? Here's the definition I got from a Google search now. It was a little bit earlier than now. It was March 29th of 2019. It's the choice and use of words and phrases in speech or writing. Phraseology, phrasing, wording, language, parlance, usage, vocabulary, terminology, expression, idiom, style, locution. Commonly used diction types: slang, colloquial, jargon. Okay, that's great, but why does it matter? The use of proper diction can make you seem smarter, more formal, more informal, more of whatever you're trying to be. Here I'm trying to use relatively informal diction to be friendly and approachable while still sounding knowledgeable, like I know what I'm talking about. So in academic writing, it's best to use formal diction to sound as though you know what you're writing or talking about. I've heard a YouTuber talk about, in quotes, skinny privilege, which is a much poorer choice than thin privilege. I don't know why, but skinny just sounds too informal. Especially if you're speaking of people who are not overweight, having advantages in society over people who are overweight. I believe it exists, but skinny privilege just sounds silly. It really makes a difference. Think First National Security and Trust versus Fred's Bank. Here's a link to that we can look at.
Command of the English language, you're just nowhere. I mean, like, say you get out of college or whatever you do. You're going to go into business. Say you're going to open a bank. Now, just for an example, you've got to give it the right name. It's got to be something big and strong, like Security First Trust and Federal Reserve. And you have to name a bank that because nobody's going to put their money in Fred's Bank. Hi, I'm Fred. I have a bank. You got $1,500? I'll put it here in my white.
All right, so that is what Steve Martin has to say, and that was from his stand-up routines from the 1970s, but it's still true today. Welfare versus aid to the poor. Again, we have George Carlin, who has a few things to say about that.
Poor people used to live in slums. Now the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. And they're broke. They're broke. They don't have a negative cash flow position.
Certainly diction, language choice can be used to disguise harsh truths, can be used to hide the truth. And George Carlin, as you might guess if you're familiar with him at all, is not a fan of that.
Because a lot of them were fired. You know, fired. Management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area. So many people are no longer viable members of the workforce.
Severe appearance deficits. Again, Mr. Carlin in the same routine discusses some very funny things about politically correct language that's designed to be soft, and he's obviously not a fan of it.
Psychologists actually have started calling ugly people those with severe appearance deficit.
Welcome to 1984. Peace is our profession. George Carlin, in another routine, talks about old people who are 90 years old being called 90 years young by TV news anchors and things like that. And his point of view was, are we so afraid of aging and dying and death that we have to use an antonym? And, of course, the answer is yes. George Orwell, in his famous novel 1984, talks about the Ministry of Peace and the Ministry of War. The Ministry of Peace is the Ministry of War, so they don't call it the Ministry of War. They call it the Ministry of Peace. The Ministry of Love is really the Ministry of Hate. The Ministry of Truth is, of course, the Ministry of Lies. So George Carlin, of course, has an opinion on that.
The government doesn't lie, it engages in disinformation.
And George Carlin has an opinion on shell shock and the evolution of that term to various other terms that describe the same condition.
And American English is loaded with euphemisms. With every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat. Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. We had the war in Korea in 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder.
And finally, George Carlin discusses something called sunshine units.
The Pentagon actually measures nuclear radiation in something they call sunshine units.
And here's something from Dr. Strangelove, Strategic Air Command, Peace is our profession. And here's a sarcastic take on it. Peace is our profession, war is just a hobby. Ha ha ha. So, connotation versus denotation. 2 words can have exactly the same dictionary definition, but connotations can be very different. We've already seen welfare discussed versus aid to the poor, even though they mean the same thing. So it's an idea or a feeling that a word invokes in addition to its literal or primary meaning. Again, meaning, not meaning. Again, my Google search on March 29th gave that as the first definition. The denotation, which is the literal or primary meaning of a word, is in contrast to the feelings or ideas that the word suggests. So even if welfare and government aid to the poor mean the same thing, then one has a negative connotation while the other has a positive connotation. A Boy Scout literally just means a member of the Boy Scouts. Yes, I know they're the Scouts now, and they admit girls, but just go with Boy Scouts. Now, that term, besides literally meaning just a member of the Boy Scouts, also has a connotation of someone who's a goody two-shoes, somebody who's perhaps annoyingly willing to do good deeds and be a nice person and things like that. Think Ned Flanders from The Simpsons as somebody who might be described as a Boy Scout. Deadbeat is traditionally a word that describes somebody who doesn't pay his or her obligations, and the context can change the meaning of a word. For example, I've read that in the credit card industry, a deadbeat is somebody who always pays his credit card bill or her credit card bill, so never owes any money, doesn't carry a balance, isn't making money for the credit card company. So that changes the connotation from someone who's a non-payer to someone who pays too faithfully. Nancy Dean and N. Spence say on this slide, and here's the source where I got the slide, from slideplayer.com, diction. Diction refers to the author's choice of words. The perfect word is clear, concrete, and exact. In other words, it says exactly what you want to say, is specific, and creates just the picture you see in your mind. A character doesn't just look for something, she rummages, strains, observes, or glares. So rummaging, you can see someone rifling through or going through dresser drawer. Strains, okay, you're straining when you're looking. That'd be more like looking at something, but you could be straining to see something in the distance. You could observe, oh, okay, observe this thing going on. Glares, I don't know if that really works. You're glaring for something. You can glare at something. That's usually you express your disapproval of what someone is doing by staring at them with a very nasty look on your face. An author doesn't show or use. An author illustrates, ignites, and creates. Okay, so that would be a different, I'm showing this, I'm creating this, I'm igniting this reaction. Adjectives, adverbs, verbs. Okay, a thesaurus is one of the best tools, and Microsoft Office has the thesaurus function you can use with any of the things, including Word, PowerPoint, even Excel you can use the thesaurus function with. I'm not kidding, I just did that today. Ways to characterize diction. Well, diction can be characterized as formal versus informal. So informal is personal writing or personal speech. You might call a disease-causing organism a bug, rather than informal writing you'd call it a germ or virus, bacteria. Folks is what you might call your family in informal personal writing. Informal writing you might call them relatives. A job in personal writing, you might call it a position, a career, or something like that. Kid is very informal. Kid literally means a baby goat. Child would be more formal. So example, he's 2 fries short of a Happy Meal. That would be highly informal slang. And it's actually an example that I used in my crazy stupid words portion of my American Idiom series. He's crazy is informal. He's schizophrenic or insane. That's more formal. Can only get more formal by using the official DSM-5 Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, 5th edition, whatever, issued by the psychiatric authorities. I believe it's the APA, American Psychiatric Association. And that would be very formal and not something you should do unless you are actually a trained psychiatric professional or psychological professional. All right, let's take it another step. A regional dialect may have something along the lines of colloquial or conversational language. A dialect is an example, southern dialect. Y'all come back here now. Yes, I know it's a horrible southern accent that I just did, but anyway. Or Minnesota, oh yeah, oofda, you can have a Minnesota dialect. You can have a Great Lakes dialect. Oh, you coming to Chicago? Okay, wow, that sounds like kind of a Minnesota dialect mixed with it, but, anyway. Definitely, like the old SNL routine, da Bears. Hey, who's going to win the football game? Oh, da Bears, So things like that. Those are all accents, dialect, certain slang terms that are only used in certain regions. Slang is highly informal and not appropriate for most writing, again, unless you put it in quotes, define it the first time you use it. If you're quoting someone else using that slang, it's a good idea to put brackets in the quote defining what that is, or to define it somewhere else in case someone doesn't know what it is. Or at least you can show that you know that you're not supposed to use slang in formal writing. Jargon is the special language of a profession or group, lawyer or teacher talk, medical terminology, technical words. It's usually formal, not always, but lawyers certainly can talk about a motion for summary judgment, interrogatories, voir dire, things like that. Teachers can talk about IEPs, individualized education programs. Medical terminology, come on, subdermal hematoma, blah, blah, Many different things that are usually formal terms. Of course, people can also joke around, like, for example, with the previous slide. He's crazy. Some attorneys I've spoken to have said things like, well, I'm going to use a very highly technical psychiatric term here. Yeah, the guy's whacked. Of course, that's not at all highly technical. That's the humor. Ha, ha, ha. So, The regional dialect continued, for example, in New York City versus the rest of the United States. In NYC or thereabouts, you would wait online for something. Anywhere else, Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, you wait in line. In the coastal cities or coastal areas, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, carbonated sugary beverages are called soda. In the Midwest, Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, they're called pop. In some parts of the U.S., carbonated beverages are called tonic, such as Maine. Guy came into the 7-Eleven I worked at as my first, in quotes, real job when I was a senior in high school, and after that, and asked me where the tonic was. So, of course, I showed him where the tonic water was. He said, no, I want this. Okay, you want soda or pop, as they would call it in Buffalo. So I was like, oh, okay. And he explained to me that that's what they call it in Maine, is tonic. Then the next summer, when I had a job working in Massachusetts, that helped when someone offered me tonic and I knew what he was getting at. So in the South or Texas, carbonated beverages, Coke, Pepsi, etc., they're all called Cokes. So this conversation would make sense in Texas, as a Texan roommate of mine told me. Customer could come in and say, I'd like a Coke, please. The server says, what kind? The customer replies, Pepsi. And that would make sense. A lot of this doesn't make much difference for the SAT. Mostly nobody cares if you write something like you need, which is common in the Western United States. Kind of comes from Spanish necesitar, which, would be necessary or you need, versus you should or you ought to do something. If you have an odd regional expression for something, sorry Maine people, but calling soda or pop tonic is weird to me. Use a more mainstream expression for it since you have no idea where the grader is from. So everybody would understand if you call carbonated beverages soda. Most would understand if you call it pop. Tonic, that's going to seem a little weird. People think, well, you mean tonic water, like you mix with gin or something? All right, it does get interesting if you go away to college. Wicked in most of the United States just kind of means a synonym for cool. It's something teenagers might say, wow, that's really wicked, your car's wicked, as opposed to in Boston, Eastern Massachusetts, if you say wicked, they'd be like, wicked what? It's an adverb, basically. It's used to describe an adjective or to modify an adjective. So when I first went away to college in Massachusetts, I said something was wicked, and the person I was talking to looked at me like, do you mean something like wicked cool? So learn something new. It definitely can get a cultural education when you go away to college. And trust me, I'm not making fun of you if you're from a region where these are used. I just want people to understand you. Nobody really speaks standard American English. It's more of a business and greeting card language, as you can see, and also you can see it in my Like a Boss video on business language. Nobody really speaks that except at the office. Even business people just come home and, they don't speak that way. So we've got this here from Eddie Murphy.
And I read a whole bunch of Hallmark cards.
My lovely wife. You always mean lots more to me than you could ever guess, for you have done so much to fill my life with happiness.
Finally, I was ready.
Okay, so that was Eddie Murphy with his famous White Like Me sketch from Saturday Night Live in the early 1980s. But again, it's not even so much a racial thing, black or white. It's just there's a certain business language that's very formal and unnatural and sounds like a Hallmark greeting card or trite and stilted language that you might read in business correspondence. Some expressions are just wrong. This is where it does make a difference, at least in ACT and SAT land, no matter how many people use them. For example, the use of them or they as a gender-neutral single pronoun, a singular pronoun. I've done that as long as I can remember, but it's still not standard American English, which means it's wrong on the SAT if you refer to a single person as them or they. Even if some things that are now official English, such as the use of literal to mean figurative, should be avoided. Don't use literally unless you mean something that you're describing is exactly as you stated it. So if I got home late and I'm a teenager and my parents yelled at me, their heads did not literally explode. So say, dude, my mom and dad, man, their heads exploded when I walked in through the door. Literally, that's what happened. Their heads literally exploded. You can be like, oh my God, did you clean up the mess? What's going to happen now that your parents are dead? You'd say, no, they were just yelling at me. Oh, well then their heads did not literally explode. So essay graders do assume that you're an idiot until you prove otherwise. They don't know you, so they can't give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you're joking when you use faulty diction. They're not your English teacher or other teachers who know and respect your abilities. They're strangers who are testing your abilities. The upside of that, of course, is even if you write something that's really obvious or you think is really obvious, you'll get some credit for that. So, here are a few regional or colloquial words and phrases to avoid on the essay. Colloquial means informal, slangy. Basically, you don't know what region your essay grader is from or what she or he thinks about the following expressions, so I would avoid them on the SAT essay. For example, the positive anymore. This is apparently acceptable in some parts of the U.S. Normally, anymore is only used in the sense of that used to happen, but now it doesn't, or I used to do something, but now I don't. So, for example, I don't ride a bike anymore. Period. I'd rather walk or drive my car. That's the negative anymore. Another choice, for another illustrative contradiction from Yogi Berra, who made many statements like this, said, no one eats there anymore. It's too crowded. Well, obviously, if it's too crowded, then no, there are still plenty of people who eat there. But no one eats there anymore by itself would be a perfect use of the negative anymore. The positive anymore means something like nowadays or these days. Anymore, people use a treadmill in a gym instead of jogging or walking outside. And you can also see the novel Rant by Chuck Palahniuk, who is also the writer of Fight Club and many other books. Basically, in Rant, the people who are supposed to have been interviewed for this book, it's fiction, so they weren't really, many of them use the term anymore. So, in the sense of now, now people do this. They used to do something else, but now they do this. And you can see the Yale link, the Yale Grammatical Diversity Project, phenomena positive anymore. But if you are from an area where people use the positive anymore, please know that people who aren't from those parts of the United States, that is most parts of the U.S., don't understand it, so I wouldn't suggest using it on the essay, not only because it's not standard English, as far as I know, it's just confusing to people who don't normally see that, so that's really a bad time to introduce the grader to the positive anymore is when that person has power to grade your essay. I've got this or I've got you. You probably shouldn't use this on the essay. It's the same problem as I'm on it. You can use I'm handling it, I've got this under control, or I'll take care of your problem, I can meet your demand or request. On it also means I'm handling it. Probably shouldn't use that on the essay. On top, it's fine if you literally mean something is placed directly on something else. I left the large picture book on top of the coffee table. Books like that are called coffee table books for a reason. If you mean in addition to, additionally, or also, say that. So don't say, he was late, rude to me, and tried to overcharge me on top. You can say, he not only was late and rude to me, but he also tried to overcharge me. Say it as if you mean you're in control. You don't say, I'm on top of that project. You say, I have that project under control. So that's a better way to put it. The safest way to say something has two separate qualities, is not only, but also. For example, this video is not only interesting, but also educational. You can also say this video is interesting and also educational, but the not only, but also construction will sound fancier. If you're going to use terms such as neat, nifty, cool, awesome, da bomb, avoid using these terms in your essay writing unless you're quoting someone. If there's some other reason to use it, such as it's in the prompt for the SAT essay, you should note something like, the author uses slang to create an informal colloquial tone, or the author cites the informal language used by his critics to subtly mock them and discredit their points. So, here's an example. An author writing for teenagers might write something like, hey, you should take mythology in school. The Greeks were the original party animals. What could be more radically awesome? The part about the ancient Greeks were the original party animals was in something published in Scholastic or by Scholastic that I ran across when I was in college. Yes, I also thought it was just as lame and trite as you did. Also, lame probably isn't a word you should use on the SAT essay unless you mean someone who has a disabled leg. So a cultural conservative might make fun of people who think he supports policies that are too harsh by saying, yeah, you wouldn't want to harsh anyone's mellow, dude. Okay, he's obviously making fun of that choice of words and that whole concept by making fun of that kind of language, or attributing that kind of language to his opponents. Frank Zappa's Valley Girl, his daughter Mooney at Zappa is the girl speaking on it. You know, would you want your essay to sound like this?
Like, oh my god! Like, totally! And Cedar's like, so bitchin'. There's like the Galleria. And like all these like really great shoe stores. I like love going into like clothing stores and stuff. I like buy the neatest mini skirts and stuff. It's like so bitchin' because like everybody's like super, super nice. It's like so bitchin'.
Okay, so that's probably not the tone that you want for your SAT or ACT essay. Even though it doesn't have to be very formal language, it should sound intelligent, and with all due respect to Mooney at Zappa, who I believe actually is an attorney, she doesn't sound very intelligent there. I think the story of that is Frank Zappa basically just woke her up on a Saturday morning and said, here, I just need you to talk into a microphone and just pretend you're talking to one of your friends, something like that. And that became a smash hit. That's actually the first time I heard of Frank Zappa was when I heard that song. So you want to watch out for oralizations, writing phrases you've heard the way that they sound. So could've, should've, would've, or coulda, shoulda, woulda. People here could've, could apostrophe ve, could, sort of contraction for could have, and heard could of, so that's where that comes from, or coulda, shoulda, woulda. Don't use that. See also used to, the proper term is used to, not used to or used to. Even used to is better to avoid in formal writing, but definitely don't use used to or used to. I've heard people interpret on the verge of as in on the urge of, so, literally they heard on the verge of and they thought it was on the urge of, so as in, God, she wouldn't stop making fun of that disabled kid. I was on the urge of killing her. No, you were on the verge of killing her. Think about misspelling someone's name. People wouldn't like that, so try not to misspell things that you've heard. Haters gonna hate. More oralizations to avoid in formal writing. So here we have haters gonna hate. We got this strutting cat. I love this meme. That's really funny. It's really pithy. It's exactly appropriate for this discussion. Gonna, don't use that in anything like truly informal writing. So a quote in creative writing where you say what this character said. You're going to use it in a meme. Wanna, same idea of gonna. You want to use want to, not write want to, don't write wanna. Haters gonna hate, or they hate us because they ain't us, so it is evocative language. Don't use this language unless it's in quotes with language saying, it's slang, the popular slang saying, So let's address proper diction. Accept versus accept. Accept means receive or tolerate or put up with. Accept means exclude. Affect versus effect. Normally you pronounce both of them affect or effect, but you know what? Anyway, affect is how you pronounce both of them most of the time. So affect, I'm pronouncing that way so you know what I mean, means cause a change, reaction in, a change or reaction in. Effect means the change or reaction that is caused. Business/academic English has turned effect into a verb, as in to effect social change, but that's not going to be on the ACT or SAT English/writing tests. Affect can also mean your presentation, demeanor, or appearance, but that's only in psychological jargon, not SAT or ACT English. In case you're wondering about it, it would be something like, the patient presented an inappropriate affect, even though it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside and he was wearing only a tank top and shorts. He did not appear to be in any distress and in fact was laughing uncontrollably. That would be an inappropriate affect. But anyway, what you need to know is to affect with an A is to change something. How will this policy affect immigration? Well, its biggest effect will be that people have to do this, that, and the other thing. All right. Ain't. This is non-standard. Do not use this unless you are quoting someone. For example, don't write something like, hey, if someone gives you $50 for 5 minutes of work, you ain't going to complain. No, you should write, hey, if someone gives you $50 for 5 minutes of work, you aren't going to complain. Informal language is fine on the SAT essay. Non-standard language is not, or isn't, but definitely is not ain't. You can use it in a quote, as Yogi Berra sagely stated, it ain't over till it's over. Or as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Grammatically stated, that would be, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. False. Improvement is always possible. And here's the Latin translation of if it ain't broke. Si fractum non sit, nole id reficiere. I'm sure I butchered that, but oh well. Don't like it? Sue me. Already versus already. We are all ready to go. Even Paul? Yes, even Paul. He already had his boots on when he got here. Already means all of a group are ready. Already, one word, means at the time referenced an action had been taken or an event had occurred prior to that time. She told me to come, but I was already there. There's AC/DC. You shook me all night long. All right versus ALL right. It's normally not acceptable to use all right, but all right as one word, but occasionally it's used to avoid confusion, such as the Who song, The Kids Are All Right. It was so named to avoid confusion. The song was about the kids not having any serious problems, not each of a group of kids being correct. Altogether versus ALL, altogether two words. Altogether one word means completely or thoroughly. I find crayfish to be altogether disgusting as a meal. My cousin who lives in Louisiana likes to mix crayfish, catfish, and shrimp all together two words in his gumbo. And etc., take out the and. Some people think using etc., and so on indicates a lack of further examples, but I don't believe that. It really depends on the context. All motor vehicles, cars, trucks, motorcycles, etc., registered in the state must be inspected annually for safety equipment problems. Just putting in the etc. for any other kind of motor vehicle they may have forgotten about or they didn't know existed or comes into existence later. Any motor vehicle. Go! Allude versus elude. Allude is a reference to something else, such another work, something like that. So, do is an allusion to The Simpsons. To be or not to be, that's an allusion to Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet. No, actually, it's not Romeo and Juliet. It's Hamlet. Sorry. Okay. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. All right, anyway. Elude is to escape something. The burglar eluded police and security. That's physically eluding someone. Eluding can also be, can happen in your mind when you can't recall something or don't know something. So, do you carry the book 100 Ways to Start a Fight? I'm not sure. Who's the author? An Irish gentleman whose name eludes me. Monty Python. So, before you send me the hate mail, most of my ancestors were Irish. So, here we can even see it.
Never mind. How about 101 Ways to Start a Fight?
By?
An Irish gentleman whose name eludes me.
All right, so there you have that. These ones really bug me. Anthropoid versus arthropod. An anthropoid is a higher primate, especially an ape or an ape man, the so-called missing link, something like that. An arthropod is an invertebrate animal of the large phylum Arthropoda, such as an insect, spider, or crustacean. Yes, even a crab or a lobster. But it wasn't a rock, it was a rock lobster. etymology versus entomology. And etymology is the word origin or the study of word origin. Entomology is the study of insects. So here we go, we see, no, you wanted entomology, man, spelled with an N. See, it's from the Greek entomon, meaning insect, which itself is a neuter form of entomos, meaning segmented or okay. So here you go. Ty Waterhouse. People who can't distinguish between etymology and entomology bug me in ways I cannot put into words. Ha ha ha. Aggravate versus irritate. To aggravate someone, to aggravate something is to make it worse. See also exacerbate. No, it's not a naughty word. It just means making something worse. So your asthma could be aggravated by a high pollen count or air pollution. To irritate is to annoy someone or cause an unpleasant physical reaction. A chemical could irritate your skin. Your younger brother could irritate you if you're a little kid. So, you really aggravate me when you correct my diction. No, I really irritate you when I do that. Ha ha ha. Get the joke? All right. Amount versus number. An amount is something you can't count without a unit. The amount of gas I bought for my car was 14 gallons. My tank was pretty low. Number is used with things that are easy to count because they are distinct. The highest number of trees you should have in your yard is 4. Beside versus besides. Beside means next to. My cell phone is always beside my wallet in my pants pocket. Besides means in addition to. Besides my wallet and cell phone, I always carry my home and car keys in my pants pockets. All right. And between versus among. Between means dealing with two persons, objects, etc. The race was a tie between Bart and Lisa. And among means more than two objects or people. Zach was a man among men. Idiom for someone outstanding or important, worthy of special recognition. Different from versus different than. Both are acceptable in U.S. English. In British English, the phrase appears to be different to in British English, but different from also works in British English and will work in U.S. English. So different from might be a good idiom to use. Farther versus further. Farther and further can both be used as adverbs. Bob threw the discus farther than Tom did. Some wouldn't use further in this case where physical distance is involved, but most would use farther and further interchangeably. Those who wouldn't use further to describe a greater amount of something. So, don't annoy us further, we have our work to do, from the Rush song and album 2112. Further is also an adjective, e.g., further announcements will be forthcoming as details become available, or as more details become available. Hung versus hanged are often used interchangeably, but in formal English, hanged is the method of execution. Hung is when anything else is suspended from something. About his neck, the dead bird is hung. That's an Iron Maiden, the song Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, of course based on the Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem. Hung up on is an obsession, a fixation on something, some psychological quirk. This guy won't stop talking about bananas. He's really hung up on those. Use obsession, fixation, devotion, or similar terms instead. Hang up, according to Google, is an emotional problem or an inhibition. So someone could have a hang up about something in their life. Learn or teach. You learn when I teach you something. I'll learn you about this is non-standard and sounds like you haven't learned much yourself, probably nothing worth learning. That is, teaching me, learning in quotes. Ha ha ha. So yes, you don't know the difference between teach and learn. Maybe you don't have a hell of a lot to teach me. But what? This is a non-standard regionalism. I'm not sure from what region, but don't use it. I could not believe but what he was using my car without asking me first is wrong. I could not believe that he was using my car without asking me first is right. Can't hardly, can't scarcely. You should use the word can. You could say can hardly or can scarcely. I can't hardly read this guy's writing is wrong. You can say you can hardly read this guy's writing. They all mean barely, and no one would say or write he or she can't barely do something. Barely means you almost can't do something, but you still really can do it. So yeah, barely means you almost can't do something, but you still really can do it. As in the Pink Floyd song, Have a Cigar.
We're just not
There you go. We're so happy we can hardly count. So on to the next slide here. Choose versus chose. Choose is the present tense. Chose is the past tense of to choose. Complement versus complement. I'm pronouncing it that way so you know what I mean. Complement with an E in the middle is compliment, even though you pronounce them both compliment. A compliment is a nice, flattering thing. You look nice today, Mrs. Cleaver, said Eddie Haskell when he came to visit his friend Wally. Compliment is to complete something or a full set. Donuts complement the taste of my hot coffee. I own a full complement of commemorative Dunkin' Donuts coffee mugs. Conscious versus conscience. If you are conscious, you are awake, or alert and oriented, as nurses would put it. They have different degrees of A and O, but that's not important here. Your conscience is your sense of morality, right and wrong. So, in many things in pop culture, films, TV shows, you have a little devil here. That's the bad. That's the bad part of your conscience. The good part of your conscience is the angel. So we see the scene from Animal House, and we see this other graphic here. Excuse me. So, leave versus let. Leave generally means to depart. Let means to allow. So it's let me go, not leave me go. However, generally people say leave me alone, not let me alone. But at least one English grammar purist, while acknowledging this, has written that leave me alone means go away so I can be alone, to work, think, sleep, etc., something you might want to do alone. Whereas let me alone means stop bothering me. Most people would say leave me alone in both cases. And wrong diction can be funny. What's a honeymoon sandwich? Let us alone. Okay, or honeymoon salad, perhaps. And here's the URL for that if you want to look at that. Later versus latter. Later means sometime in the future. Latter means the second of two things. So between being poked with a sharp stick and eating mint chocolate chip ice cream, I'd choose the latter anytime. Now or later. Ha ha ha. Latter versus former. Former means the first of the two, and latter means the second of the two things. Between being poked with a sharp stick and eating mint chocolate chip ice cream, I'd choose the latter over the former anytime. So latter is the second one. A comment on irony from Grammar Girl, Mignon Fogarty. What is irony? A common mistake is to treat an unhappy coincidence as ironic. It isn't ironic that your sink gets clogged after Thanksgiving dinner, or you run into an old boyfriend at the cafe where you used to hang out together. Irony, in the way it's usually used, has to be unexpected. A vegan who likes to hunt is ironic. Irony can also be visual. A muscle-bound biker on a Harley dressed in black leather but wearing a pink fuzzy hat with a pom-pom on top is probably wearing that hat ironically. So you can see Grammar Girl's posts at quickanddirtytips.com. You can also hear her on the Grammar Girl podcast and the Grammar Daily, the page-a-day trademark calendar, from which I got this page. So ironic. Please know that ironic means unexpected when it refers to an event. Some comedian I saw who was very funny, but I can't remember her name. She said, "No, Alanis, those things are ironic." No, Alanis, those things are not ironic, they're unfortunate. So that refers to this song here, which we can hear right now. Hi. Unfortunately, the copyright holder of Alanis Morissette's Ironic wouldn't let me use roughly 15 seconds of the song for educational purposes. You can still go to the URL listed in the description, and I've also listed it here. I have disputed their blocking of my video over 15 seconds worth of fair use. But until then, this is what you get to see instead of the little clip of the video. So, it's like rain on your wedding day and a free ride when you've already paid. And yeah, those really themselves are just unfortunate. They're not ironic. But if you had a backstory, you could make them ironic. So let's say the wedding day rain turns out that the bride-to-be is the daughter of the biggest farmer in Iowa who's going to lose his humongous farm to drought unless there is this huge rain. And, of course, the huge rain that saves the family farm ruins this girl's/woman's outdoor wedding. So that would be ironic. And a free ride given to somebody who's finally able to pay after getting caught trying to evade the fare too many times. You know, that somebody's always getting caught by the conductor. Where's your ticket? Oh, you know. So the person's finances greatly improve. They get a great job, so they proudly display the ticket with the proper fare that they've purchased to the conductor, who says, "Oh, you didn't have to buy that. Today was free ride day," or "Today is free ride day." All right, that would be ironic as well. So, Weird Al Yankovic, he likes to talk about in his Word Crimes video, irony is not coincidence.
Figure out the difference. Irony is not coincidence.
Two people slipping on a banana peel or slipping on banana peels and dying on the same day is a coincidence. It's not ironic. A man slipping on a banana peel and dying when the banana was his favorite fruit is ironic. You know, something like, "Old Banana Bob never went to his skyscraper construction job without a banana in his lunchbox. Then one day he slipped on a banana peel some idiot had left on the girder he was working on. He fell 40 stories to his death." That would be ironic. So from the Columbia Journalism Review, when we wrote about irony nearly 3 years ago, it was to remind that irony is not coincidence. One news outlet wrote of the irony of a man's return to an old hobby. It's ironic because his hobby is raising pigeons, birds which are known for their homing skills, among other things. That's funny, interesting, unexpected maybe, but not ironic. And here's the URL for that. Irony is often something like this. Someone takes great care to prevent a catastrophe, but those steps cause the catastrophe. Think of a man who is so afraid of losing his home to fire that he buys every possible high-tech smoke/carbon monoxide detector, every sprinkler/fire suppression system, etc., and overloads his house wiring, causing an electrical fire that burns the house down. Da-da-da. See the movie 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis for an example. A time-traveling scientist from a plague-riddled future tries to prevent the plague. In the past, 1995, when the movie was made, he inadvertently gives a mentally ill person the idea of starting the plague. So it's a really common sci-fi trope. You can see Terminator 2, the Netflix series Travelers, any movie or TV show about time travel, basically. So the Ramones censor, let's say censor poo. The irony, it seems to me, it's un-American policy, referring to the parental, record labeling, like parental advisory, explicit lyrics.
Irony, it seems as if to me it's un-American policy.
Alright, any O. Henry short story, for example, The Gift of the Magi, which we see here. Man sells his watch to buy combs for his wife's long, beautiful hair. The wife sells her hair to a wig maker to buy a chain for the husband's watch. So you can see here's the watch with the chain, here's the combs and the hair. It's not quite true to the story, but good enough. It's a very pretty thing. Alright, here's the 12 Monkeys sci-fi series, which is based on the movie 12 Monkeys. So change the past, save the future. Alright. Ironic speech. Ironic means sarcastic or joking by saying the opposite of what is meant when it refers to a statement. So if somebody says, "Hey, great idea, Einstein," there's an episode where somebody, a character actually points that out. "Oh, I see what you're doing. You're calling him Einstein, but you really mean that he's stupid." I couldn't find any clips from that on YouTube, but there is this.
That's the last of them! Good riddance. What the hell would we ever need guns for?
Victory is ours.
Quick, grab the guns! They're our only hope!
Hey, Bob, you remember the other day you were asking me what the definition of irony was, and I said,
Basically, it is, okay, everybody gets rid of all their weapons and say, "Oh, isn't that wonderful?" And then, of course, it ends up destroying their society. If you're in high school, you get this, right? Pretty much every insult from a teenage kid that isn't just, you're ugly, or you're a dummy, is something like that. Like, hey, beautiful, you're so gorgeous. When they're saying, no, you're really ugly, ha 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 ha, smooth move, X-lax, nice play, Shakespeare, okay. Irony versus sarcasm. Most sarcasm, cutting mean comments is irony, but not all irony is sarcasm. So irony is used to convey usually the opposite meaning of the actual things you say, but its purpose is not intended to hurt the other person. Sarcasm, while still keeping the characteristic to mean the opposite of what you say, unlike irony, is used to hurt the other person. So here's a URL for that. The Columbia Journalism Review says, sometimes it's necessary to point out it's so much easier to hear irony or sarcasm than to read it. So a change of tone, an emphasis on a word, a drawn-out syllable all signal I'm not saying what I really mean, I'm saying the opposite, or I'm being ironic. But in writing, yes, she's very good, he said, has no signals to indicate that what was said was not what was meant. Yes, she's very good, he said, yet adding italics or other emphasis could indicate a sarcastic tone or not. So it might be necessary to add the adverb, yes, she's very good, he said sarcastically. Why sarcastically and not ironically? Because the remark is mean, said with a sneer. It's, as the daughter said, meant to wound. Webster's New World College Dictionary says sarcasm is a taunting, sneering, cutting, or caustic remark, jibe or jeer, generally ironic. Irony, on the other hand, is most often directed at events or situations, not people. Someone can be ironic, but usually that person is speaking of it, not being the subject of it. A long wait in the line could yield the ironic statement, my, how time flies, but if noticing the cashier can't count change, someone says, I guess they've got Einstein working up there, that is sarcasm. And here's the URL for that at the bottom here. Okay. Choose versus chose. Choose is the present tense, chose is the past tense. Compliment versus compliment, a compliment, I'm pronouncing these differently, so you know what I mean. Compliment with an I in the middle is a nice flattering thing. You look nice today, Mrs. Cleaver, said Eddie Haskell when he came to visit his friend Wally. Compliment, compliment, is to complete something or own a full set of something, can also be the full set itself, so donuts complement the taste of my hot coffee. I own a full complement of commemorative Dunkin' Donuts coffee mugs. That's a very lovely dress you're wearing, Mrs. Cleaver. And for those of you who don't know, this is from Leave It to Beaver, a series that was on in the 1950s and rerun ad infinitum. It's probably still on some cable channel somewhere. Be careful with these ones. American. If you talk about something being American, people from Canada, Brazil, and Mexico could also call themselves Americans because they're from Canada's in North America, Brazil is in South America, Mexico is in Central America. And preposition is a word governing and usually preceding a noun or pronoun and expressing a relation to another word or element in the clause, as in the man on the platform. She arrived after dinner. What did you do it for? That's the Google dictionary definition when I did a Google search. A proposition is an assertion that all people are created equal. A suggestion, my friend had a business proposition that I rejected when I realized it was a pyramid scheme, something like that. Venerable as opposed to venereal. Venerable means respectable, honored, worthy of reverence or veneration, especially because of age, position, etc. Also some religious overtones. An Anglican archdeacon or Catholic, is also called venerable. A Catholic dead person who has not been beatified or canonized but has been given one title on the way to being declared a saint. Venereal is relating to sexual desire or sexual intercourse. The venereal act relating to venereal disease, that is STDs or STIs, sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. A steady increase in venereal infection, Google search definition. And a story that I've heard about Lyndon Baines Johnson when he was president. Our venereal president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, as opposed to presumably the person introducing LBJ meant to say our venerable president. All right, illicit versus illicit. Illicit means bring forth. Illicit means illegal. Loud talk will not elicit sympathy after an auto accident. Illicit income is often euphemistically called the underground economy. He, she, they versus him, her, them. He, she, they, subject, him, her, them, object. Mostly obvious. The problem is this is he versus this is him. It's actually this is he. When someone asks, hi, is this John on the phone? Yes, this is he. Even though that sounds weird, you can think he is this. You wouldn't say him is this. By the way, gender-neutral pronouns like Z and her won't work in SAT or ACT land. Please just save that for when you're in college. I versus me, mostly obvious. I is the subject, me is the object. Same problem, it is me is what everyone says, it is I is what's actually correct. You can tell someone learned English as a foreign language if that person says it is I when you ask who is it when they knock at the door. My 8th grade English teacher actually said that's how she knew that was her foreign exchange student who had learned English as a foreign language, because someone would knock on the door. My English teacher would say, who is it? And say, it is I. So, all right. In light of versus in lieu of. In light of means considering. In lieu of means instead of. So, you might get, well, I'm going to give you this book as a gift in lieu of the CD that you wanted because I only had money for one or the other, and I know you wanted the book more. That means instead of. So in light of means considering, well, in light of the fact that you have helped me so much, I want to buy you a present. It's versus its. IT apostrophe S means it is. ITS means belonging to it, the possessive of it. Cream than broken glass. Then is time. Things were different back then. Or a conclusion from logic. Well, you should do it then. If you walk outside in the morning and everything is wet, then it probably rained last night. THEIR, THEY apostrophe RE. There, THERE, is a location. Why don't you wait over there? THEIR is the possessive of they, belonging to them. I can't wait there because it's their space and they won't let me use it. THEY apostrophe RE means they are. They're not going to care because they're not here and you'll be gone before they get here. Uninterested as opposed to disinterested. Uninterested means you're bored by something. Disinterested means you're impartial or unbiased, objective. A judge should be disinterested but not uninterested. A disinterested judge is not related to one of the parties. For example, if you sued me, came into the court, and saw that the judge was my brother, you would insist that the judge recuse himself because you'd say, well, you're the defendant's brother. I can't get a fair trial from you. You're not disinterested. Uninterested would be interesting if a judge, judge could appear to be bored. Just reminds me of a judge acting like a 12-year-old, which they don't do, but it's a funny scenario. This case is boring. Could you take it to another court? No judge would ever do that, but if they did, someone would look at the judge and say, what's wrong with you? Your Honor, you have to hear cases whether you think they're boring or not. Okay, so that would be an uninterested judge. Which versus that? Use that if you're removing the words. Well, if removing the words would change the meaning of the sentence. The car that was stolen last week, it's important, we don't mean just any car, we mean the one that was stolen last week, was found only after it had been stripped and burned, which was unfortunate for the owner. We don't really have to have which was unfortunate for the owner. That's just some additional extra information. Of course it would be unfortunate for the owner. It's not so important to know if it's unfortunate because it's obvious. Who versus whom. Who is a subject, whom is an object. Think of the book For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. If you could rearrange the sentence and use him in it, whom is correct. If he would work, then you use who. To whom are you speaking? Are you speaking to him? Okay, so you can see, you could rearrange that. Are you speaking to him? Who is that on the phone? Is that he on the phone? Yes, I know. Is that he sounds wrong? But it's not. That's really what would be an answer on the SAT, and they could easily put that in the writing test on the SAT or the ACT. Whose, WHO apostrophe S, versus whose, WHOSE. Whose with the apostrophe in it means who is. WHOSE means belonging to whom. Who owns this? Okay. All right. Alternative spellings of the term women, whether you mean plural or singular women, WOMYN, WIMMEN, WIMMIN, WOMXN, whatever. Just please use the standard spelling. I'm not making a political statement. If you want to use those words, great. But save the politics for college, or at least your college application essays, if you want to show them how woke you are. And by the way, use socially conscious or aware or activist instead of woke, unless you're using quotes and defining it, etc. WOMXN is a new word for 2019 according to dictionary.com. Here's the link to NBC News to find out more about that. That was, ironically, came up within a day or so of when I was looking this up. So, sorry, I advanced too soon. YOUR versus YOU apostrophe RE. Your means belonging to you. YOU apostrophe RE is you are. You're not going to leave your things here. YOU apostrophe RE. This isn't your YOUR space. The space does not belong to you. Other words and phrases to avoid on the SAT and ACT. Liable does not mean likely, at least it's not to be used when you mean likely that something good is going to happen. It means that you're legally responsible for something, as in when you are sued and you're found guilty, so to speak, in civil court when you have to pay, or is likely to experience a misfortune in formal writing. So you could say, you're liable to be liable in court if you keep doing this thing that you'll be sued for. But you can't say, oh, that book's liable to become a bestseller. You'd say it's likely to become a bestseller. Off of. When you're getting something from someone, don't say, oh, I'm going to get something off of someone. Use from, not off of. Also, the of is redundant if you're saying something fell or bounced off of something. The ball bounced off the wall, not off of the wall. Irregardless, this isn't a word, probably because it's a double negative. Ir is something that negates the rest of the word when it's a prefix, and less also does the same thing. So you don't use irregardless, you just use regardless. Real. Real is an adjective, it's not an adverb. So things you can see and touch tend to be real, that would be proper usage. You look real good. You could be kind of a wiseacre and respond, no, I look really good. You done real good. You can imagine your English teacher's head exploding. My 8th grade English teacher told us about some old TV show that was on some detective show or something, and the leader of this gang of detectives or police officers or whatever would say at the end, you done real good. No, you did really well. Sort of or kind of. Unless you mean a variety or type of thing, these expressions are wrong. It's fine to say, I usually don't like that kind of or sort of movie, but I found the Lego movie very entertaining. Really? Well, I guess I kind of or sort of liked it. Would not use that correctly either. You'd say, really? Well, I guess I liked it somewhat. I guess I liked it a bit. I guess I liked it to some extent. Something like that. Myself. It's fine if you wrote, I went to the movies by myself, or I, myself, found the movie rather boring. Don't write myself when you mean me. As in, you should hire a professional like myself. That's wrong. Try, you should hire a professional like me. So we can hear that in this rant at the end of the song, You'll Dance to Anything by the Dead Milkmen.
You'll dance to anything by any bunch of stupid Europeans who come over here with their big hairdos and intend on taking our money instead of giving your cash where it belongs to a decent American artist like myself.
Alright, the same goes for yourself or ourselves. Same idea as myself. We need to do it ourselves would be proper. Not, they should have told ourselves before doing that. Or, instead of, they should have told us before doing that. Someone's name, she took an action, he took an action. You hear that a lot in folk songs. It's kind of a folksy, well, John, he got his gun out, and he shot at big old Bill, something like that. So, that is something that just is only used kind of to, make it sound more folksy in folk songs or country songs, things like that. Country rock, think of a Leonard Skinner song or something like that. Or, what's his name? Jim Croce, Big Bad Leroy Brown. Anyway, the he or she, it's superfluous, redundant or unnecessary. So anyway, don't use that in formal writing. Just don't use it in writing, period. Unless you are actually writing folk songs or country songs. Thunk. Okay, that's not the past of think. It's fine to use as onomatopoeia, as sound effect word, a word that basically is a sound effect, or it sounds exactly like what it is. So beep, something like that. So thunk. Thunk could be something like this. Boom. So when something hits something, that's a thunk. According to How J. Saycom, onomatopoeia is pronounced onomatopoeia, not onomatopoeia, which is how my 9th grade English teacher pronounced it. Some kid thought she was saying, I don't want to pay ya, and wrote that on a test, according to my English teacher. And alright, but we can check that with this. howjsay.com. And okay. All right. Onomato. Yep, here we go. Oh, we're not trying to translate it. All right, so how do we pronounce it? Oh, define. Huh. Okay. Did we just hit return? Oh, we just
Onomatopoeia.
Here we go again.
Onomatopoeia.
Ooh, plural.
Onomatopoeias.
Ooh. Alright, that's pretty cool, but let's get back to doing this. Alright, so all of these are acceptable in very informal writing or when quoting someone, but not in standard American English. Don't use that on the SAT or the ACT. So, alright. Raise versus rise. To raise means to lift up, collect, increase, or nurture something. I raise children, they raise the rent, we're trying to raise money to fight multiple sclerosis. Those are all things that are transitive, means it usually has an object. Raise your hand, collect money, we're raising money. We increase, they raise the rent. I raise pigs in my spare time. Something like that. So it has an object. It's transitive. Rise means when something or something climbs up, gets up, or grows under her, his, its own power. It's intransitive, does not take an object. So, defendant, please rise. The sun will rise in the morning. That kind of thing. The dough will rise when you let it set. Sit. Okay. Same. It's fine if you say 6 donuts and half a dozen donuts are the same number of donuts. Make sure the cashier doesn't charge you 6 times the single donut price. Get the half dozen price. It's cheaper. Same works fine there. Same is also a weird lawyer or commercial kind of word being used in the place of it or them. I have ordered 600 dozen donuts for Donut Fest and have tendered payment therefore. Please assure me that you will deliver the same to me at 144 Corolla Drive, Donut Town, no later than 6 a.m. on Friday, June 10th. Use normal pronouns such as it or them. I'd like some butter. Please pass the same to me immediately. See, doesn't that sound weird? Right. People don't say that. The reason is because. Try just using because. The reason I was late is because traffic on Route 62 was blocked by an overturned tractor trailer. Better would be I was late because traffic on Route 62 was blocked by an overturned tractor trailer. The same applies to the reason why I was late is because. So try and. It's an old Steve Martin routine where he jokes about being a cheerleader, and one of his cheers that he wrote was, "Try and get a touchdown, you scumbags!" So I'm saying, no, Steve, try to get a touchdown, you scumbags. All right. Unique. Unique is an absolute. This is something that's always annoyed my father whenever there's interviews with athletes or athletes on the late news. It'd always be something like, well, he's got a very unique talent. No. You cannot be very unique. Unique means one of a kind. So you can't be very unique any more than a woman can be a little bit pregnant. It's a binary system. Either something's unique or it's not. Either a woman's pregnant or she's not. So also don't say a little bit pregnant, unless you're joking.
It's a contraction. What's a contraction?
Well, it's the shortening of a word or group of words by omission of a single letter.
Contractions. In serious academic writing, it is best to avoid contractions, things like don't, can't, But in general writing aimed at literate adults, it's not a real problem. Don't assume a contraction is wrong on the ACT or ACT English test if it's not very formal writing, and most of the passages aren't. Contractions are fine. Do make sure you know the difference between contractions and possessives, as listed above. So IT'(S) is a contraction for it is, versus ITS, which means belonging to it. You know, the robot raised its metal hand. ITS. IT'(S), it's good that we have robots that can't harm us because of the 3 laws of robotics. Of course, according to Dilbert, they have a robot saying, oh yeah, because that's totally a real thing. Anyway, there versus THEIR, versus THEY'(RE). You know, their THEIR means belonging to them. THEY'(RE) is short for they are, etc. If you have trouble distinguishing contractions from possessives, maybe you shouldn't use contractions. Or just study and learn them, please. Abbreviations and acronyms. It's a really good idea to define acronyms. If you use POS to mean point of sale, that is a cash register area in a store, make sure you define POS as point of sale. Otherwise, someone might think the POS at the front of the store is meaning, what, the piece of S at the front of the store? Oh my god, wow, I didn't know you had such a problem with cashiers and store managers, or is there a particularly nasty customer up there? Abbreviations, make sure we know what you mean. CA could mean California, it's the postal abbreviation. Can also mean Canada, it's the internet's suffix for Canada. LA could be Los Angeles or Louisiana, for instance. Just as with slang, you can use acronyms and abbreviations as long as you define them when they are first used. And don't assume that everyone knows what I mean. People outside your region might not know radio station call letters like, you know, KSAN or WGRQ. People have no idea what that is. Abbreviations for transit systems, BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, or MARTA, basically the BART train that they have in Atlanta. It's very similar to BART, or common abbreviations. For example, everybody from New Jersey calls the state Jersey, but a non-New Jersey native may be confused. You mean Jersey in the UK? So, yeah. That's one thing they get wrong in movies is, yeah, we're gangsters from New Jersey. And anybody who's ever been to New Jersey or knows anyone from New Jersey would be, no, you're not, because you would say we're gangsters from Jersey. But anyway, remember, the essay graders assume you're an idiot, so you get credit for stating obvious points, such as the narrator in a poem or the story is not necessarily the author, life is often unfair, a little bit of a digression, but again, just start with the obvious, define the obvious. Do not assume that people know what you're talking about. Even if the essay grader knows what you're talking about, the essay grader might decide, well, you don't know that the reader knows what that is. You really should define it. You may end up losing points over that. Text and internet language, just don't. Do not use that in writing. LOL, you are silly if you use this in writing on the SAT. ROFL, okay? Just don't. It's not appropriate for any writing you'll do on the SAT, ACT, or any class unless you're specifically studying text or internet jargon. And again, you'd have to define it. If you feel the need to cite internet or text language, put it in quotes and define it. If you use LOL without defining it as internet slang for laughing out loud, I guarantee you'll lose points. It's Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. The grader will not, may not only think it's inappropriate, but might not even know what it means. Just don't use text or internet language in your SAT essay unless you define it so anybody knows what it is. Because it helps the grader in case they could be older than dirt and not know what it means. Or even if they do, again, they could just be, they feel that it's not appropriate to list that or to cite to it without explaining what it is, which it really isn't in any kind of formal writing. Idioms/regionalisms. One, you could go see my American Idiom series for more details on this, but idioms are particular ways of expressing things that can't be figured out or deciphered by using the meanings of the original words or the words that constitute a particular phrase that is an idiom, or they're just slang words that are particularly, they're particular to certain regions and subsets of people, things like that. So, for example, there's slang. In most parts of the United States, wicked means basically cool, fashionable, interesting, fun, cool. But Eastern Massachusetts, the greater Boston area, wicked is an intensifier meaning extremely. You go to school here? Your parents must be wicked rich. Heard that at Williams once. Or, you must be wicked smart. What'd you do on the SAT? So, I said something was wicked, and somebody's like, you mean like wicked good? Anyway, so passive voice is more acceptable in some parts of the United States, e.g. the western or southwestern states that used to be part of Mexico. You can get told something. Spanish uses a lot of things that are very similar to the passive voice in English, so things can misplace themselves, etc. Okay, you need to do something in the West, again, that's from Spanish, like necesitar. So instead of being told you should, ought, or must, as they would do back East, in the West it's you need to do something. And sometimes the spoken word is almost indecipherable, as in this Carl's Jr. / Hardee's Philly cheesesteak burger commercial.
How you on?
Good to see you, Mal.
Good to see you.
Oh, what you doing? Was you eating a burger?
No, I'm a burger guy sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Meat chop with meat, you know what I mean?
Oh my God, let's go down. What's with it, man? Want sushi? Want sushi? Thought you was your fluffy cheesesteak kind of guy.
This burger, cheesesteak right there, you know what I'm saying? Pop bars, all the onion, cheese, huh? And a story.
Ethnic sayings. These are things you don't want to use unless it's a quote. Certain ethnic groups or subgroups within American society will use certain words and phrases that just are not standard American English. So the subjunctive mood, he be, you be, there are some languages where the verb to be only has one form, so when people from those groups came to the United States, that kind of became part of their slang or vernacular, if you will. So don't use that. Please don't use the subjunctive except in places where it would be used in standard American English. Like, I want you to be quiet. That would be fine. But you would not say, he be writing this. No, he is writing this. Use. Okay, that's a New York City, Great Lakes oralization as far as I can tell. Hey, what's you guys doing? Okay, that's not correct. Probably also, East Coast like Philadelphia, things like that. Dem, dees, and does, as far as I can tell, that's from German instead of, them, these, and those. Things like dein, that somehow became thine, so when, a lot of English has its roots in German and Danish and things like that, so there you go. Dem, dees, and does, please don't use that. Foreign words, don't use them unless they're commonly used in English writing. Kindergarten or en masse are fine. Na zdravia, Polish for bless you or to your health, or cheers is not. Apologies to my Polish-American friends and former classmates. It's a regionalism you'll hear around the Great Lakes anyway, where there's a big Polish population. Same goes for words like gapa or dupa, those are Polish words. Gapa means an idiot. My physics teacher would write that if I made a stupid mistake on my physics test. So, those are things. Don't use that because you have no idea if the person grading your essay knows what that means. And just don't. So the further your dialect is from standard to American, from standard American English, try that again. The further your dialect is from standard American English, the more likely it is that the grader won't understand. Remember, standard American English is greeting card or business language, like the Eddie Murphy White Like Me Saturday Night Live sketch there. No one actually speaks that all the time, but if your written English is significantly different from standard American English, the grader may feel like people did watching that Carl's Jr. commercial. You actually need subtitles even though it is actually American English being spoken. So please don't be like that. Miscellaneous things I recall that may help. I disremember. No, that's not a word. I don't know if anyone said that, but someone must have, because that was when I was in 7th grade or 8th grade we were taught to do that. I disremember is not a word. Niagara, N-I-A-G-R-A. No, it is spelled N-I-A-G-A-R-A, even though it is pronounced Niagara. And the Viagra pill is so named because somehow they wanted to associate it with Niagara, I guess the liquid flowing or something like that. My English teachers wanted to make sure that we spelled it correctly, not just the way most people pronounce it. Makes sense. You should be able to spell Niagara if you live in Niagara County, New York. Sneaked versus snuck. Sneaked is the preferred past participle of sneak, sneaked, but many teachers will accept snuck as a past participle. All right. Finally, tone, connotation, and denotation, ACT and SAT questions. Suppose the author wanted to. You'll see that on the ACT English test or the SAT writing test. Which is most appropriate? No explanation, just choices. They're often all grammatically correct. They just use different words and phrases with the same denotation but different connotations. Other times they're all grammatically correct, but some use improper or inappropriate idioms. Yet other times they are all grammatically correct, but some use improper or inappropriate tone. That is, they're formal when they should be informal or informal when they should be formal, to go along with the rest of the piece that you've read. So, words with I'll try that again. Words with correct denotation can have the wrong connotation or connotations. One of my college friends literally became a Rhodes Scholar, graduate student at Oxford University in England on a scholarship reserved for students who graduated from U.S. universities. You have to be very good at academics and athletics to get that. Bill Clinton was one. He referred to his fellow students as, in quotes, roadies, that's my friend, not Bill Clinton, as a way to be a little less formal about it and poke mild fun at them, at himself. Yeah, he was good. He'd hear people say, oh, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to know that. It's kind of a common American expression for you don't have to be a genius. And he'd say, well, I'm a Rhodes Scholar, so I guess I wouldn't know. Ha ha ha. Anyway, it sounded like roadie. A roadie is a member of a rock band or any band's road crew that helps them set up their equipment, stage, etc. when they're on tour. Roadie wouldn't be the right word for a Rhodes Scholar to use in a formal environment unless that Rhodes Scholar were trying to make a joke. There is a place for proper tone. With all due respect to George Carlin, sometimes gentler, more polite language is called for, especially when it doesn't really disguise the meaning, it just is appropriate. So even he acknowledged that. There's one routine that I've heard where he says, do you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife? Who, her? Oh, hell yeah! I do is much better in that situation. The idea is to be appropriate without clouding the meaning. That is, to be polite or tactful without confusing the listener or reader. So, a fart could be flatulence, flatus, intestinal gas, something like that, rather than fart. This goes both ways. The use of common, simple, or vulgar language may offend the reader or make the reader discount the stated ideas. That is, skinny privilege instead of thin privilege. Opponents of the idea can latch on to how stupid skinny privilege sounds. Profanity or offensive terms used to refer to certain groups. For example, I've seen the use of co-ed to refer to women college students decades after that really should have been stopped. Also won't help you. And again, the skinny privilege YouTuber, it's just, I agree with your idea, but you're making yourself sound really dumb when you don't have to. The use of overly sophisticated or elevated language can confuse or alienate a reader. So high school English teachers love to use this with a good purpose. They'll say, open your anthologies instead of open your books. They're anthologies because they have excerpts from a number of different works in them. It also works when you're trying to teach teenagers new words, but it doesn't when you're trying to convince readers of your article that you're someone worth listening to or to whom they should listen. And it also might sound like you're trying to be humorous. If I say, oh, I would like the denatured protein from the ovate product of a bird that has descended from, the prehistoric dinosaurs, what? I want some chicken eggs. Make me some eggs, please, So it's very funny. Many, many funny jokes, like the cheese shop sketch by Monty Python does.
I thought to myself, a little fermented curd will do the trick. So I curtailed my wall-polling activities, sallied forth and infiltrated your place of purveyance to negotiate the vending of some cheesy comestibles. Come again? I want to buy some cheese! Oh.
I thought you were complaining about the music.
Oh, heaven forbid, I'm one who delights in all manifestations of the Terpsichorean muse.
Sorry?
I like a nice dance, you Faustin.
Things like that. But please don't do that in your essay. Especially, it's even worse, and I've said it many times, but I'm going to repeat myself, if you try to use a really sophisticated, highfalutin word, and you use it wrong. Then you get no credit, and the reader will think, oh, this person is an idiot who thinks he's smart. Do not be that person. It's better to use a simpler word correctly than to use a really sophisticated $10 word incorrectly. Let's try a sample question. If you want to write a good college application essay, remember, the admissions committee wants to know about you, not what you remember from history or English class. Dazzling your audience with your knowledge of Middle Eastern history won't help you much if you don't explain why history is important to you and what you intend to do with your knowledge in the future. So here's A. So this is supposed to be part of an SAT or ACT passage. And then... So, question 1. Suppose the writer wants to continue the paragraph above from point A. Which choice best fits the tone and meaning of the paragraph? A. The people who decide if you get in want to know what kind of kid you are. Showing them that you read some history books doesn't tell them much about you other than that you're maybe some kind of history geek. Does that sound appropriate? Maybe, but let's see if there's something better. While it's good to demonstrate your academic knowledge, you should make sure they know why you'd benefit from studying at their college and why they'd benefit by letting you study there. That's better. While a mastery of the facts is indeed intellectually stimulating and salubrious, one should also take pains to emphasize one's athletic and extracurricular interests, as well as the general itinerary of one's scholastic voyage, so the committee may find one to be a suitable candidate for their esteemed institution. Okay, this is over the top. Intellectually stimulating. Salubrious means healthful. Using one as a pronoun. Generally, I would suggest that one avoid that because it makes one sound rather pretentious and like a real jerkbag, so don't be a pretentious jerkbag. D. Show those professors that you're awesome and would be a great student in every way. A total whiz in the classroom, fun at rockin' parties, and kicking butt on the athletic field. Please tell me that you know this is way too informal. Okay, so let's go on and check the answers. A and D both use too much slang and formal language. Kid, geek, whiz, kicking butt, rockin' parties. Okay, they all sound also like hackneyed writing from some 1980s copywriter trying to sound cool. Hackneyed means trite or cliched, in case you're wondering. C is ridiculously elevated. It's pretentious writing. Your first clue should have been the use of one as a pronoun. The use of the adjective salubrious. It means healthy, as I said, should have also been a clue. B is appropriate. It matches the tone of the passage before the question, doesn't use inappropriate slang, and doesn't use pretentious language that doesn't match the passage. So, if you want to write a good college essay, remember the admissions committee wants to know about you. Yeah, okay, that fits with the, while it's good to demonstrate. So, all right. So here are the references that you can look at here. This is where I got everything, or where I got a lot of them, a lot of the items that are in here. And here are some more references. You can find all these. You can pause it if you need to get this. I'm also going to put this in the description underneath the video, so you should be able to find any of these things. Some of these books that I've used, an old edition of Barron's SAT, the book I normally use when I'm working one-on-one or in a group with SAT students, and Barron's SAT, the 29th edition, which is the most recent edition, the sections on grammar and usage, and the 27th Common Problems and Word Usage. So, did you find this video useful? Please like it and subscribe to this channel. Neither action costs you anything. You'll be alerted about my new videos. You can also click on the little bell to be alerted. Sometimes YouTube is flaky and you may find yourself unsubscribed for no reason. Why do I care? It's simple. YouTube doesn't let me share any ad revenue. If you've seen any ads before or during this video, I didn't get any money from it. And I won't unless and until I have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours, that's 240,000 minutes of view time in a year. While many of these people are watching these, I don't have 4,000 hours of watch time yet, and I don't have anywhere near 1,000 subscribers. So for the same reasons, you're not only welcome, but encouraged to share links to this video, put it in playlists, put it up on your own website. I don't care as long as you credit me. I'm always happy to read and respond to constructive criticism or suggestions for new videos. I reserve the right to delete comments from and block those who specialize in destructive criticism, trolls, or things that are off topics, spammers, disturb people. People like to use the comment section for their own agenda sometimes. Not on my channel, bud. Other than that, thanks for watching. You're awesome. I hope you do really, really well on the ACT, SAT, or whatever test you're watching this video to review for. Thanks. Have a good day.